Hello everyone and welcome to Black Pearl Presents. Today's video is going to be something a bit different. I wanted to have a small vlog series where I basically do a voiceover over these drawings that I make. I know it's been a long time since my last upload, and I know it seems like I say that every time, but I'm hoping that this series is going to be a little bit more consistent. It was designed to be so, very freeform, sort of loose. Basically, I'm just recording myself doing these drawings that I make every so often, and I do a voiceover on top and just kind of talk about, like where I am or maybe something interesting I've been thinking about or what have you. First things first though, a bit of a channel update. I am working on a project right now to continue my video essay series. This is going to be a new sort of subsection called Decades of the Undead, in which I am chronicling the cinematic interpretations of Dracula over the last 100 years. I'm really excited to do that series because it means I get to rewatch a whole bunch of vampire movies, but it's been a bit tedious to read Dracula. Not that it's a poorly written book by any means. I actually am really enjoying it. It's just that by this point, I know all the beats and there's just not really any surprises. So Bram Stoker's Dracula is almost it's probably the most faithful interpretation so far. The Universal Dracula takes some creative liberties and, combines some things. Nosferatu is a whole different beast, sort of. There's a lot of little variations, and so it's been kind of weird, reading I guess I probably should have read this first, but whatever. I love working with charcoal, and I can't really say specifically why. I just enjoy it. I don't know if it's the process, working from, so you have this blank page, then you tone the paper and you draw on the shapes and, you start gradually adding in more detail, etc., etc. And then you get to a point where you're just pulling out the lights and darkening the darks. And I don't know, it's such a well-paced medium that I just find it so appealing, on a very basic primal level. I don't know. I think charcoal as a medium suits me very well, and I just really love the emphasis on light and the sort of values between the whites and the blacks, those middle grays, that whole spectrum. To me, it's just something really beautiful and peaceful about it. And it does remind me of old school comic books or, of course, gothic horror. And I think that sort of aesthetic gels really well with the subject matter, which are these terrible monsters. I actually had a conversation with someone recently where they asked me if I ever work with color. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I work with color all the time. I open up my sketchbook of old drawings and stuff, and there's nothing. I don't know what that says about me as an artist, but I think I'm just really comfortable where I'm at right now. If someone were to ask me what my art style is, I don't know if I'd be able to really tell them. I'd say, okay, well, I'm very detail-oriented, and I tend to gravitate towards portraits, sort of, big faces and stuff like that, with a lot of grotesque features and a lot of, range to play around in as far as, their faces are concerned, I also like dynamic lighting, so pretty much all of my works are photo referenced. With this piece in particular, I actually referenced a photo. I took a series of photos where I played with the light. I was in a completely dark room and just turned on a lamp and just pointed it at my face and moved it at different angles and took pictures every so often. And I made little funny faces and, more makeup in some of them. And it was fun. With this piece and the last piece that I drew, the werewolf, I like to start with a human skull and sort of add parts to that for whatever monster I'm creating. So, for example, this one right here, Fish Face 2.0, I decided to, I drew the skull and then just added fish parts to it, basically. I took a little bit of, and you can see everything starts with a thumbnail sketch, just so I can sort of get the idea in my head on paper, and it's sort of like a trial run, a rough draft, just to see if what I'm thinking of is possible. And I'll tell you that 9 times out of 10, the thumbnail sketch does not resemble the final product. The final picture is what I like to think the thumbnail is sort of it's a first idea, right? It's you're just spitballing, right? And then the second time you do it, or third time or whatever, That's when you really start to have these ideas formulate. And what I try to go for when I draw these is a character. What's their backstory? What is, like, how can we get as much expression in their face as possible, you know? And I think photo references really, really help with that, because you have an actual, like, real world stand-in to base your fiction on. I pulled elements from a bunch of different fish people, I guess. So I love the creature from the Black Lagoon, and so there's a lot of creature in here, specifically with like the shape of the eyebrows and the bridge of the nose. And there's a lot of like the creature from Monster Squad. He's a bit more ferocious. He doesn't have the sort of, I would almost call like the original creature design sort of pitiful. He doesn't have that sort of, that childlike innocence of the original. He has a much more aggressive design. And so I borrowed elements from that, you know, and I also took elements from like real world piranhas, and specifically with the mouth, I like to think that I was channeling Jaws. And with the texture of the skin, I almost wanted him to be dragon-like. I was talking with a friend, you know, during the initial, before the drawing was complete, and it was like, yeah, I've been thinking about like adding whiskers so he's a little bit more dragon-like, but I didn't know if it was possible, and it turns out it wasn't, because the drawing was a little too far along for me to go back and erase and add the whiskers on top, which is fine. I think it's fine without it. Like, I think it really works. It's not overtly dragon-like, but I do think there are some elements of a dragon in here. Of course, once I come up with the design and I make that thumbnail sketch, once I actually get to the paper, I tone the paper, of course, and then I get to work. And the first thing that I like to draw is just a human skull, like a very human shape, just because, you know, if you're a fan of my last videos, or if you're familiar with my work in general, you just know that I love psychology, and I love the psychology of fear and what makes us afraid of things. And so I've really been trying to sort of break down and understand these sort of visual elements that will trigger a fear response. And so with this piece here, or with both these pieces, and any future works that I do that are based like original monsters, I want to start with a human skull, because monsters are a reflection of our human fears, our humanity. And I think the best way to trigger that, or to channel that on even an unconscious level, is just to start with a human face. So that's what I do. And then like for this one, I just started slapping fish parts on it. And, you know, you get something that's somewhat human, but also very monstrous at the same time. And I think if you're at all unnerved by it, looking into its gross frog eyes, then I'd like to attribute that to the little part of you that's in the actual monster. This is the first time I've ever like sat down and actually recorded myself drawing. This is like a first for me, and I'm sorry if it's any at all disorienting, whether it be the position of the drawing or the changes in lighting. This drawing, I would say, took me approximately 2, maybe 3 days, but when I actually look back, because I just draw them, you know, I don't pay attention to really how long it takes. But when I looked back and saw how long the footage was, that's a definitive answer that this drawing took like 4.5 hours. So it was like a surprisingly short amount of time. And obviously that time was broken up over like a couple days, you know, like, okay, I would draw a little bit when I got home from work, and then go to bed, get up for work, you know, blah, 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 right? So if I had like one dedicated sitting, it'd probably take like 5 hours. Although this is one of the more detailed pieces that I've done, so I can't say that every one would take this long, but it was definitely interesting to see. Also, as far as these drawings are concerned, like I said in the beginning, this series, I designed it in a way where I can just sort of keep pumping these out, you know, as long as I have paper to draw on and charcoal to draw with, because art stuff is expensive, but also time is expensive. I really enjoy teaching people things, but unfortunately, if you're looking for art tips, this is not the right place to be, because, I don't know, I thought about that, like, okay, my original plan for this series was just to record myself drawing and then just sort of talk about the drawing and my process in detail. But like, who cares? Like, who am I? I'm not like a certified like artist. I don't have a degree in drawing. Like anything I tell you, you could probably learn off YouTube. I guess you're here already, so you know, whatever. You're here just because like maybe you want to hang out, or maybe you like monsters or gross fish people, or maybe you're just curious. I don't really care. Either way, you're here, and I'm glad that you're here. Thank you. Well, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And before I go, I just want to give a shout out to Catrice and the like fire music that's been playing in the background here. She makes really, really great beats, and I've linked her Bandcamp at the end of the video. And I also just want to, I gotta do the plugs, check out my Instagram, because then you can see the rest of the monster collection and any updates or behind the scenes of monsters that I'll be working on in the future. Also, that reminds me, I have no idea what I'll be working on in the future, so please feel free to drop a recommendation in the comments below. Now that I have more free time, I'm going to be better about that, about reading comments and like doing actual content creator stuff. So yeah, hey, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.